Okay. Are people hearing me? Can I see some hands in the audience if you can hear me? Yay! And I see some cards. Wonderful. Um, Doris gave me a wonderful hint about how to make sure that everybody's on the same page. I'm going to get started. Going to get to the next slide. Okay, what I try to do rather than say certain words over and over again, I have abbreviations for what hands I'm going to be discussing. So just like on the card, I've set up these little abbreviations for you by how they look on the card. You know, we've got 3 sections on each of the panels. We've got on the left-hand panel, we've got 2025, 2468, and like numbers. And I'll just show you, these are the abbreviations that I use. Year, even numbers. In the middle panel, O for odd numbers. They're all pretty self-explanatory, but unless you're clued in, you might be scratching your head. So if I start talking about CR3, you'll know I'm talking about the third hand in the consecutive run section. Okay, so hopefully you have your new card. If you don't, at least Jerry will have these available for you. If you want a copy of the slides, just ask her afterwards. There will be a PowerPoint available to all of you so you can review everything that I said, just in case you don't have your card and or you're not that quick at writing things down. So the other thing besides knowing what section I'm talking about is the specific hand I'm talking about. It's pretty straightforward. Usually, always I talk about what number it is in the group. Like if it's the second year hand, it would be Y2. If it's the fourth hand in Winds and Dragons, it would be W4. But there are a few specifics. As you know, sometimes a hand comes in a single suit or a multiple suit. So I use a little decimal point. Like, let's give a good example. The even section E1, there are 2 options. You can either play it in 1 suit or 2. So there's E1.1 and E1.2. And likewise, sometimes it's on a different end of the number line or there's a slight variation to it. So for instance, in the consecutive runs hand, you can do 1 through 5 consecutive or 5 through 9 consecutive. So the lower end of the number line I tend to refer to as A and the upper end as B. So you'd get CR1A would be 1 through 5 and CR1B would be 5 through 9. So hopefully those abbreviations will get us through a lot of this lecture without a lot of confusion. And I've been told this is going to be videotaped too, so that you can play it back. But between listening today, having the PowerPoint, and if you need to watch it again, you can. Those should all put you in good shape. And the third thing that you can do is email me. If you ever have a question at the end of this presentation, I put up my email and my blog, my website. It's not really a website, it's just a blog page. But you can ask me questions about anything that we discussed today or anything else that you see on the card that confuses you. I'm here today to try and get you up to speed with the new card, but there's always going to be something that confuses somebody, and it's okay. We've all been beginners. Sometimes even people that have been playing for 30 years get a hand that really flummoxes them. So don't worry. We will all get through this, and that's my job, is to help you get up to speed. What Doris was saying about luck favoring the prepared mind, I'm here to prepare you. I'm here to get you ready, knowing the card as well as you can, so that when you get an extra joker or you pick up a dragon or whatever, you'll know what to do with it. It's a lucky thing to get a joker, but if you don't know how to use it, what good is it? So we're getting prepared. We're learning the card as best we can, so we're ready when the good stuff comes our way. Deal? Deal. Okay, so without further ado, what's new in 2025? The elephant in the room. Those of you who have the card or perhaps heard the rumors, there are 2 significant typos on this year's card. If you have the large card or the small card, each has its own distinct error. And the league is in the process of fixing it and will be sending out new cards in June. It'll be identical to the current card, except the little typos will be fixed. And those two typos on the small card, it has to do with a hand in section E4. It's hand in section E. It's the fourth hand down. For some reason, they only printed it in one color. So it's not clear that those additional two pungs are in the opposite suits to the 2, 4, 6, 8. So it's a little confusing for now. You might want to highlight it on your card and know that it will be corrected in the second printing, which will be available in June. They'll be sending it directly to you if you ordered it directly from them. Likewise, on the large card, it's a different mistake. I had a large card, so I had no idea about the small card until I saw what people were saying online about it. On the large card, the third hand in the consecutive run section, for some reason, first they print it in one suit, in the usual, just everything looks monochrome blue. And then for some reason, or black, but in the second one, they have it all in green, which doesn't help anybody. So the problem is they meant to do it in 3 colors, green, red, black. So just highlight that for yourself and know that they'll be fixing it in June. But it should be 3 suits, and it's the middle section, the middle of the 3 suits in the consecutive runs. That particular one is going to have to be a pair. So it's Kong, pair, Kong in 3 different colors. Okay, so much for our elephant. That was something that everybody needs to know anyway. But now I'm going to get into the fun part of the card. As you know, you need to be familiar with the card. I encourage you to know the whole card. I know people that are afraid of, I don't know, some people are afraid of singles and pairs. Some people are afraid of quints. There are some people that they get flummoxed every time they see a 3-suited hand, or they don't like to go for things with wins. Everybody has their preset, their favorites and the things that they avoid. But I'm here to remind you that the more you know the card and the more options you will have. And so I don't want you to cut yourself off from any particular section of the card. I don't want you to memorize the card, but I want you to familiarize yourself with every section of the card. And one reason why that's really relevant this year is you may think you're going for a certain hand, but it may end up being in a different section. For instance, I talked real briefly that there's edition hands all over the card. There's 3 different ones this year instead of having a special edition section. But I think the most important thing is number 2 that I point out, that there are like numbered hands all over this card. You may be collecting like number 6s and you think, oh, I'm going to go for LN whatever, LN1, LN2. But you may end up using a hand in 369 that uses like 6s, or you may be using something in the even section that uses 6s. You don't know. Just because they are like numbers doesn't mean you are limited to any one specific section. They show up all over the card. So the better you know the whole card, the better you have options to use those like numbers that you've been collecting. So that's why I really, really encourage you to familiarize yourself with every section of the card. Likewise, just as the like numbers appear everywhere, dragons are in every section except quints this year. And the 2025 hands show up obviously in the year section, but they're also in the wins and dragons and the singles and pairs. As usual, the big hand, the 75-cent hand, is a 2025 hand. Finally, something that I love, that I try to encourage everyone to remember, is the mnemonic for odds and evens. Sometimes it doesn't matter. There have been years it was irrelevant, but this year it's back. If you get odds and evens, all odds are all evens, and you have a bunch of wins, there are 2 hands that incorporate that. If you're playing W5, the 5th hand down in the wins and dragons section, everybody see that? It's 4 of east, 4 of north, and 4 of south, and then single pair pung of the same like odd number. And the similar parallel is the next hand down with evens and east-west. My mnemonic for that I want you to always remember, evens go with east and west. There's an E in the word west. Odds go with north and south, which both have O's in them. So evens, east, west, odds, north, south. Sometimes you'll be collecting like numbers and you'll get some wins. This happened to me the other day. I had a whole bunch of twos and a north and three souths. And what are you going to do with that? I guess the one thing you can do with that is is look at quints perhaps, because then you're almost at your Kong of souths. But even so, when you're in those wins and dragons section, just remember the odds, north, south, evens, east, west. Great mnemonic. Okay. Another thing that's especially hard for rookie players is that they get very confused about 2025 and other melds. A meld, some of you play bridge, so you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. A meld is a set within the hand. So, for instance, a pair is a meld of 2 tiles. A pung is a meld of 3 tiles. Something like 2025 is a meld of 4 tiles, but they're each singles. So remember that they're each singles, so you know that you cannot call for the 2 unless it's your final tile. You can't, in the middle of the game, try to complete a 2025 and put it up on your rack in the middle of the game, because it's all singles. It's only for the final tile that you can call for it. So that's the distinction between a single tile meld and a regular Kong or pung. So the first single tile meld I'm going to talk about is something that we saw last year too. It's called a chow. In Gin Rummy, we call it a run. It's a Chinese mahjong thing that doesn't usually show up in American mahjong, but I like it when I see it. I mean, it's kind of fun. The idea is it's 3 straight numbers in the same suit. So 5, 6, 7, 2, 3, 4. But all of them are in cracks, or they're all in dots. They're all in the same suit. And it's 3 tiles. So that's what a chow is. There are 2 hands this year that use the chow. The consecutive run, hand number 4, and the Winds and Dragons, hand number 2, each use a chow in a very specific suit. You choose the suit, but they have to all 3 be in that suit. There's other, as I was saying, there's other melds of single tiles. So 2025, we see 2, 4, 6, 8. Again, that's 4 singles. 1, 3, 5, similar to a chow, but remember, it's not consecutive, so it's not really a chow. 3, 6, 9, same idea. It's not really consecutive, but it's the same idea. There's 3 singles. And then the really interesting hand this year, CR7, where it's 5 consecutive numbers, one of which is the pair. But you get to choose where the number line fits around that pair. I'm calling it a floating pair just because I like the imagery of a pair sort of floating within a sea of single numbers. And that pair falls somewhere within that range of 5 numbers. But remember, they are all singles or pairs. You cannot call for that for an exposure. You can only call for that meld of singles and the pair as your final mahjong tile. You can't call in the middle. It's only for the final mahjong tile. And then the final single tile meld that's a little confusing is that addition hand in 04, the one about 9 plus 1 is 10. We know the 0 is a dragon. We know that is a soap, and that the 1 can be of either of the 2 suits that the 9 and 1 are not in. The 9 and 1 are same suit, and then the 1 that equals 10, that 1 has to be of a different suit than 9 plus 1. So those are single tiles. They look like they're part of something bigger, but you can't call them for exposures. So that's very important, especially for rookies, but everybody needs to remember you can't call for it in the middle of the game. You can only call for it at the end. And then what is not on this year's card? There are no quints of dragons, no quints of winds, no quints of flowers. The only quints that show up on this card are numbers. Personally, I'm not that thrilled about it. I think it's a little bit weak this year. It's not the strongest quints section I've seen, but I'm sure when you've got the jokers and if your tiles point that direction, it's still worth going for it. It's just I have fun when there's more variety to the quint hands. The other thing to note is there are no single flowers on this year's card. There are singles of just a bit of everything else. There are singles of numbers. There are singles of winds. And the really interesting thing is there are singles of dragons. And I really enjoy that. I like that there are singles of dragons this year. So, what is on the card? I was just saying, we have single dragons. There are two different hands that use them. The like numbers hand, the first one, and the concealed hand 369 number 6, where you have, well, we'll go over it when we get to it. And as I said before, there are pairs, pungs, and kongs of every kind of tile throughout the card. There are pairs of dragons, there are pairs of flowers, there are winds, there are pungs of flowers, which is kind of unique. Some years there aren't. And some years there's things like there's not pungs of nines, but this year there are pungs of nines. There's no number that doesn't have a pung. There's no dragon or wind or flower that can't be a pung. So it's all very wide open. As I said before, the only thing that appears as a quint is the number. And reminder again that the single soap appears in 2025, but it also appears as 0 in 10. And the other really important thing, especially for beginners or for anybody who's trying to remember what a hand is made of, we always need to equal 10. I have 14. We always have to have all of our combinations total up to 14. So the most obvious is the pung kong hand, I call that, where you've got 3 of a kind, 4 of a kind, 3 of a kind, 4 of a kind. So 7 plus 7 is 14. And it's basic, but sometimes we forget. We don't think about it, and we're like, how many flowers do I need? Oh yeah, I've got 11 tiles. I need 3 more flowers, or I have 3 kongs. I need a pair of flowers. The flowers are the filler. You put them in at the end in terms of counting it up. It's really useful to remember 14. So just reminding everybody, always think of 14. So now I'm getting to my favorite part of the lecture, where I talk about my favorite hands for this year. Some of you have remembered previous years I've talked about goofy things like the bridesmaids' hands or sandwich hands. I get into these little kind of trippy imaginary things. So this year I've come up with some interesting mnemonics for some of the new hands on this year's card. First one I'm going to talk about is in the evens section. It happens to be the one with the typo on the small cards, so that's unfortunate, but it will make you remember when I describe it to you now. It starts with 2, 4, 6, 8. Okay, so it starts with 2, 4, 6, 8, and then that's in a suit of its own. And then you're going to have it complemented by 2 little pung-pungs, like pom-poms. One pung in suit B and the other in suit C, so that you've got your 2, 4, 6, 8 with pungs in the other 2 colors. And they can be pungs of, as long as they're the same number. They have to be the same number, any even number. So it can be both in 2s, both in 6s, both in 4s, both in 8s, but it has to be that same number. So you get your 2, 4, 6, 8 and 2 matching pungs in the other 2 suits. And that gives you 10 tiles. So you need 4 flowers. And that gets you to your pep rally with your 2, 4, 6, 8 and your pung-pungs. Got it? So now you won't forget that you need pung-pungs to go with 2, 4, 6, 8, and then the flowers complete the set. So that's my little mnemonic for that. This one has been a big hit. I think everybody loves the like numbers anyway, and the fact that a single dragon is easier to get than a pair. This first hand in the like number section, what you have, the easy way to look at it is, well, it's a kong and then another kong and then single dragon. I've got more fun to do with that. Instead of calling them kongs, I'm calling them families. So I've got 2 different families of 4 that went on a picnic, and each family brought their dog, which is their dragon. So it's 4 plus 1 and 4 plus 1. That gets you to 10. And then the third picnicking group is a young couple, and instead of bringing food, they brought each other a flower. So we have a pair in the same number, but remember, it's just a pair. And it's that same like number in that third suit. And then they've brought their pair of flowers, and that gets you up to 14. So it's a cuter way to remember that like numbered hand is, well, how many of what do I need? I know that I need a Kong with a matching dragon, and I need a second one with a matching dragon. And then how many of that third suit? Oh yeah, it's that pair with their flowers. So that's how I'm going to remember that hand. The next one I'm going to talk about is in the consecutive run section. That's when we talk about these hands with the pungs, with the chows. This is one of them. You take any three consecutive numbers in a suit. So it could be, well, not any. In this one, actually the highest you can be is a 5. So anywhere on the number line between 1 and 5, you say you have 4, 5, 6, or 2, 3, 4, all in bams. Just a single one of each of them. And then you're following that with Kongs in the next two numbers. So that's why I said you have to, the highest you can start with is 5. Because if you do 5, 6, 7 in dots, then you're 8, bam, 9, crack, or something like that. But you could not start with 6, 7, 8 because you got nowhere to go for that second Kong. So remember that. I didn't put that on here, but remember that the highest you can go with CR4 is to start with the number 5. So the idea is you've got your chow, and then followed by Kongs in the next two suits. So it's 1, 2, algebraically, it's n plus 1, n plus 2, singles of those. And then the next number in the series, n plus 3, in a different suit, 4 of those, and then n plus 4, 4 of those in a third suit. And that only gets us up to how many tiles? 11. So how many flowers do we need? 3. So there are similar hands to that in other sections. Again, remember, a chow is only straight 1, 2, 3 like that, but in the odd section and in the even section, what I was just talking about with the pep rally, you have similar hands where it's that singles section, that singles meld, and then complementary chows or Kongs or pungs, depending on the hand, to go with it. So just sort of get into that open-mindedness when you're collecting tiles in the Charleston. If you see a little pattern in one suit and then you're sort of growing a very nice number A and number B with Kongs or pungs, you can do a 3-suited hand that way. Just takes a little creativity. So keep those hands in mind. They're fun. They're a little bit off the beaten path, but I enjoy them. I like challenging myself. The floating pair, that's the one I was just talking about, where it is a like number hand. But it's got a really interesting little twist of it. So you take, when I first looked at this hand, I was confused how to get it. And then I realized you really treat it like a like numbers hand. You've got 2 Kongs of the number and then a pair in the third suit of that number. And your job is to collect the other 4, any 4 consecutive numbers that go around that pair. So in the same suit. So for instance, say it's a pair of 7s. You can go anywhere as long as that 7 is part of that sequence of 5. You could do 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You could do 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It can be anywhere on the number line is that pair that matches the Kongs, but you have to have singles all around it to total up to a whole number of 5 of them, 5 different numbers. So the trick, as I said, is to start with the like numbers, and then you worry about what else is going on around it. Another interesting hand. I really thought this was way off the beaten path. I was very impressed that they came up with this one. And remember, since we've got 4 singles in a pair and 2 more Kongs, no flowers needed. So interesting hand. It is doable. It seems very hard at first, but it really is a nice, fun hand, especially if you don't have flowers. It's something to think about doing. Okay. This one I got a real kick out of. We are not used to seeing the wins in other sections. We're used to seeing it in the year section sometimes, and we're used to seeing it in the wins and dragons section and in singles and pairs. But this year they put it in the odds section. And when I say wins, I mean that special meld of NEWS, which again, remember, all singles. You cannot call for the W in the middle of the game. You have to have all four of those wind singles together. Either you collect them or at the end you call for the final Mahjong tile, but you cannot call it in the middle of the game for exposure. So that wins exposure, that wins meld is sort of, if you think of it as a bell curve hand, the NEWS is the middle of the bell curve in that odd hand with pairs and then matching pungs in two different suits and then the news in the middle. It's got two options on the lower and upper ends of the number line. And you know me, I'm goofy. I thought, why is there news in a different neighborhood? And I said, oh, the paper boy is expanding his route. This is called the paper boy hand. So anyway, just a goofy hand that stuck out to me because I'm not used to seeing news in different sections like this. So I got a kick out of it. Okay, this is the ultimate ridiculous Bubbe name of a hand. The second hand down in the Winds and Dragons, we have a chow. And what I love about this is the chow is of whatever suit you want it to be. The chow can be in red, green, or white, your choice. You're going to be matching that chow with all the dragons. Doesn't matter which suit. You can make it, you have to represent all three kinds of dragons, and you have to represent all three sizes. Doesn't matter which is the pair, which is the pung, which is the kong. You just need to represent all three kinds of dragons with a few flowers to match. So you've got 9 total dragons, 3 in your chow, and then a pair of dragons. I mean, a pair of flowers. So the idea is you've got a little bit of flowers, you've got the chow, and you've got the dragons. So of course it's the Parina Dragon Chow hand. Very silly. But that's all you need for it is dragons, flower, and a chow of any 3 numbers, because all the dragons are represented in all 3 suits, so it really doesn't matter what the chow matches. They're happy with anything as long as it's a legitimate chow. So what I found when I made this hand was I thought I was collecting, I don't know, I guess I thought I was going for like numbers, but then I started finding consecutives. But I just kept on picking up dragons. And that's really the key to this, is if you get enough dragons, you can figure out a way to get like numbers, to get the chow. If you have any 2 numbers in sequence, you can find one on the bottom of it or on the top of it to make that little chow. It's really not the hardest piece. The trick is to amass that many of the dragons. But very fun hand, very silly. And now that you know that it's the Parina Dragon Chow hand, you will not forget it. Okay, so I believe this is my last goofy mnemonic. This one I called Penny Candy. This is the other hand on the card that has single dragons. And remember, this one is in a concealed hand. If you notice on the top left that I have it in red, whenever you read my articles, if I'm talking about hands, if it's a concealed hand, I always refer to it in red print instead of black to remind you it's concealed. This one is actually kind of an easy hand to make if it weren't concealed, but it is. You're just getting pungs of each of 3, 6, and 9 in whatever suit you want, as long as you represent all 3 suits, and then a matching dragon for each of them. So you got 3 3s, 3 6s, 3 9s, each with its matching dragon, and then a pair of flowers. The reason I call it Penny Candy is because it's a little bit of everything in 3 different colors. I just thought it was fun. But these are like many hands that you'll find in concealed. The reason that it's concealed is because it would be really easy to make if it were not, because you could call for each of those pungs. So the trickiest part is amassing them without being able to call for exposures. So all of that said, I just showed you my list of my favorite hands, but I wanted to give you some more pointers. There are a couple of super tricky hands. Want to remind you that in the third year hand, I apologize, I don't like to put up anything directly from the card because I don't want to infringe on their copyright. So I'm going to just explain the Y3 hand to you. It's the 2025 in a one suit, twos and fives in a second suit, and then a Kong of Dragons in a third suit. So all three suits are represented, but if you don't represent dots in the 2025 or the twos and fives, then you're going to need a joker to make that 4 dragon Kong, because obviously there aren't 5 soaps and you need one of the soaps. You need to hold on to it for your 2025. So remember, you will need a joker. It's not really a quint, but you will need a joker in order to make that version of the Y3 hand. Okay, another thing that kind of caught my eye was the 6th hand down in the even section. It looks mostly identical to the first hand in the even section. It's Pung, Kong, Pung, but then it changes. So it's Pung, Kong, Pung, all in the same suit, 2, 4, 6. But then what used to be a Kong of 8s, you're now playing it in a second and third suit, pairs of 8s in the other 2 suits. So nobody's going to know if you can't get all the 8s in that one suit. Nobody's going to know that your hand went dead. You can always go back to the even hand number 1.1, where it's all in one suit. You can always use jokers to get your way up to the Kong of 8s. So another one that really confuses a lot of people is the second like numbers hand. Because if you look at it, the first time you look at it, you're like, wait, there are 4 groups, there are 4 melds of numbers, of like numbers. They're going back to that first suit and showing it as a pair again. So it's 2 pairs of that same number in the same suit, and then Kongs in the other 2 suits. What's going on? And the point, no, actually, it's Pungs in the other 2 suits, so it's even easier. What's going on there is you really need a natural Kong, meaning all 4 of the single number. You're breaking it into pairs, and either you have to have them all before you call for Mahjong, or that has to be your final Mahjong tile is one of those 4. You can't call an exposure of 4 of that number. You have to call it as a pair, and you have to have the other pair naturally. So that makes it a little bit harder than your average like numbers hand, but it's definitely attainable. The trick is figure out which of the 3 numbers, which suit you've got that you have it as a natural Kong, and that's the one you're going to hold on to as your 2 pairs. Okay. As we've seen in the past couple of years, they've gotten a little bit more lenient with the Winds and Dragons hands, that they've gotten some flexibility, that instead of just being like, it has to be the west to the Kong, the east-west are the Kongs and north-south are the Pungs. They give you the option. In hand number 1 and hand number 7, you can either go with north-south being the bigger number and the east-west being smaller, or vice versa. You can flip it to match your tiles the way you want. And that's fine if you're amassing all the wins that you need to make those hands. But once you make an exposure, you are committed, and make sure once you make an exposure that your easts match your wests and your norths match your souths, because that's the easiest mistake to make, is to say, oh, there's a north, I'm going to call for it. Now I have Kongs, I'm going to go for Kongs in north. And then you realize, oh, there's no way I'm making the Kongs in south, or whatever it is. It's probably trickier with the other one because of the pairs. Sorry, right here. So the trick is, like I said, make sure that your norths match your souths and your easts match your wests. Okay. Haven't I seen you someplace before? There are some hands on here that are a little bit, they're familiar, but they're not. I mean, we've just done something a little bit different on this year's card. That hand I was just talking about with the winds and dragons, where there are pungs and pairs, and 2025. We have seen that hand before in the year section several times. Sometimes it's that the pairs are the north-south, sometimes it's the pairs that are the east-west, but we have seen winds with 2025 before, but it's usually been a concealed hand. This year, they've put it in the regular winds and dragons section, and the only difference between this and a concealed hand is that you can call for the pungs. That is the only difference between this and last year's concealed hand in the year section. So it makes it slightly easier. You still have to have all those signals for 2025. You still have to get the pairs in the other two winds. But the idea is you have to have you can call for the two pungs, and that's slightly easier than making it a concealed. And the other hand that you've seen this plenty of times is in the 369 section. It's a pair and then three kongs. It's 369 either in one suit or three, and we've seen that. It's like your usual typical 369 hand. Pair of flowers, 369. Certainly straightforward. But I guess because they're using addition hands all over the card this year, they said, okay, we'll just say 3 plus 6 equals 9, either in one suit or three. So the idea is just, okay, they put in a plus sign and an equal sign, very fancy, but it's still the exact same hand you played last year. You just need a Kong of 3s, 6s, and 9s with a pair of flowers. So that's the deja vu section. And now we get to a link where you can email me anything that you want to ask me. And I've also got a link to my blog where some of this stuff is spelled out even more explicitly, as well as other hands on the card that I didn't even discuss today. They're all discussed in my blog. And I'm also going to start talking about ambiguous exposures and switching up your hands and things like that. That's for another time. That's something that you can read about on my blog page. But certainly between the blog articles, a handout of these PowerPoint slides, and if you get to watch the video again, you're going to get all nice and up to speed, and you're going to start beating your friends, and they're going to say, what the heck's going on? And you'll say, well, if you want some advice, then you can point them towards my stuff, and they can learn how to get up to speed too. So I hope this has been helpful for you, and I guess we're going to open it up to questions. Doris, are you going to be monitoring the questions?